Hey, welcome to tonight's episode of the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade. SEB presents Women in the Field. This is going to be part two of hopefully a five-part series where we will be interviewing some amazing women that are out there in the field making a difference in the Bigfoot community, whether through education or gathering evidence. If you like our show, we would certainly appreciate it if you'd subscribe to our channel. Give us a little thumbs up if you would. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us as the Sasquatch Encounter Brigade podcast. You can also find our shows on other podcast platforms such as Spotify, Google Podcast, and Apple iTunes. So tonight we're back with my friend Barb from South Georgia. She's on this week helping me interview these amazing women. She's a beginner in the field of Bigfoot research, and then everybody knows Captain Joe. We're going to have
Hey,
Melissa Adair, also known as the Bigfoot Chick. She is our guest tonight on the show. So, welcome.
Thank
hey,
you.
everybody. Hey, Barb. Hey, Melissa. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's my
Hi,
pleasure. Thanks for
everyone.
having me.
So, I had met Melissa. Well, I didn't really meet her to start with. I came across her page on Facebook. It was called Bigfoot Chick Adventures. And so I started following her and, reading some of her stuff. And then I ended up seeing her at the Molina Bigfoot Festival. And that's when I realized she lived in Georgia. And I did not know that before that. So Melissa is a researcher, a blogger. She's done some writing a writing consultant for Skookum the movie. She's had a lot
Cool.
of different adventures since she's entered the Bigfoot community. So we're just here tonight to get to know Melissa a little bit. So Melissa, could you let us know, like, how did you get started in the Bigfoot field, or how did you get the title the Bigfoot Chick?
Sure. Well, I got started in Bigfoot through my dad. When I was growing up, he was always really interested in the subject of Bigfoot. And so he had different books about Bigfoot. And there was one like Reader's Digest book he had that had the Patterson Gimlin famous picture, in it. And I always found that fascinating and liked to look at that picture a lot. And if there were any shows or any kind of programs that came on TV about Bigfoot, I would watch them with him. And so it was always just an interest that he had. And we're a very musical family, so he would make up songs about Bigfoot. We'd sing songs about Bigfoot and that sort of thing. So um, it, it was just always something that was, it was part of our family quirkiness or whatever, is that my dad really liked Bigfoot. So fast forward um, into adulthood, my mom passed away um, in 2004, and my dad came to me. She passed away in the summer, and my dad came to me later that fall and said, "I just want you to know that my interest in Bigfoot is still very much alive and well, and I've taken it to the interwebs." I'm like, "Well, that's great, Dad." And he said that
Yeah.
there's this organization called the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, and they teach you how to look for Bigfoot. And I said, "No way, that's so awesome." And he goes, "Yeah, they go on these expeditions all the way all over the country, and they teach you how to look for Bigfoot and everything." And I'm like, "Well, you should totally go do that. That sounds like a blast." And I could tell he didn't, really want to go by himself. I said, "Well, if you don't want to go by yourself, I'll totally go with you. That sounds like so much fun.
Awesome.
There's probably a ton of weirdos. It'll be awesome." And so he was like, "Yeah, okay, they're coming in February here to North Georgia." I'm like, "Well, totally sign up. Let's go." And so we did, and we took my brother because it happened to fall on his birthday weekend, and so I think my dad felt like that would be favoritism if he took me to do something, on my brother's birthday weekend or whatever. So my brother came, and my brother's a very type A personality and thinks we're all nuts. Um, and he's a formal federal agent, retired. So just
Oh, dear.
very
Yeah.
analytical. Just thinks
Yep.
we're the type. And so anyway, I just was like, my dad and I were, having the best time. We're meeting the nicest people. I was kind of shocked. I was really not expecting to meet so many really nice people. And
Mm-hmm.
and I did. And I met Matt Moneymaker and found him fascinating. He had some of the coolest stories. So I got all into that. We ended up ditching my brother and going off having a really great time and freaking each other out and doing all this stuff. So my dad and I had a great time. So
That's
we ended up
awesome.
going on another expedition with some of the same people that we had met on the first one. And we took my husband with us on this one, and just again had a really good time. Met really nice people, but a couple of really class A weirdos. And it was just, it just was such an incredible experience all the way around. Nothing Bigfooty happened, but it was like, it was kind of, it was just fun. So
Yeah.
we ended up going on a third expedition, and it was just me and my husband, and that's when the magic happened. It was in West Virginia, and um, we had gone to dinner with everybody, like everybody does on these things, on one of the nights, and we came back into camp. And as we came back into camp, these three people that we just met, we didn't know them. They were from North Carolina, and they were on this expedition too. And they come running up to all of us that had just come back from dinner, and they said, "You guys, this stuff just happened. Things were thrown at us. It was crazy. We heard growls, all this stuff." And I'm like, "No, where'd all this stuff happen?" And he's like, "Up here on this along the river." So we're like, "Okay." So all of us went with them back up to this place. They, I don't know, about a half-mile hike in, and we sat on this rock. We did everything that they did. We sat on the rock, we turned out our lights, and we just waited. And we're just like, all you hear is crickets, literally. I mean, there's nothing happening. And we're like, okay, that was fun. And and so I said, well, wait a minute. There were only 3 people here last time. There's 13 people here now. Maybe this is just
Wow.
too many people.
Too
And
many.
so they're like, you're right, right, right. So so we split the group, 6 and 7. And so I was with the group that remained behind on the rock, and then the other group went on up the trail a ways. And we sat lights out for a while, and then we radioed back and forth and decided to do some calls and wood knocks and that kind of thing. Well, in the process of doing all of this, um, this this guy that was in my group, he was like a linebacker of a guy, just tall, big, broad. He took a Louisville Slugger and took it to a tree, and you can imagine a guy that strong can make a pretty loud pop sound, and he did. And then right as this was happening back and forth between our group and his group, like immediately after he had knocked, this like huge tree knock sounded from a different direction. And we're like, oh gosh. And that was crazy. And so that happened. And then after this had gone on, our group back and forth, and the other groups radioed back right away, that wasn't us, we didn't do that. And so all of a sudden this like man beast howl, like those classic Ohio howl, and the other ones that you hear on the internet,
Wow.
on the ridge up behind me, just bellowed out and just made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It was crazy. And I just turned and looked at my husband and these other guys who were standing there like, oh my gosh, something is out here. And so I'm like, they're not making this stuff up. There's really something out here. So it was crazy. And so we stayed out there for, I think this was in October, and it was West Virginia, and it was like the night of their first freeze. So it was so cold. And so we're up there well after midnight, frozen, freezing. And this kind of went on for a little while. And then some people opted to stay out longer, but those of us that weren't used to that level of cold in October were just like, okay, we're going to go back to the tent now. But when we're going back to the tent, we're like listening to every sound, watching everything. They were kind of freaked out by it. And so that kind of lit the fire for me.
Mm-hmm.
At that point. I really was like, that kind of made me a believer. I didn't have to see it. I just experienced that and like, okay, something is out there. And so I became an investigator for a while with the BFRO, and had a lot of fun, helped organize a lot of expeditions, had a lot of interesting things happen on expeditions, not necessarily to me, but to people that I was with, and just heard their stories, and it learned a lot. It was interesting. And then I had a friend a couple of friends that kind of asked to join me on an expedition and had a lot of fun. And so one of those friends was my friend Angela, and she's the other Bigfoot chick.
Mhm.
And so she's from Oklahoma, and so she saw that they were putting on these expeditions out in Oklahoma. So we took like a 14-hour car drive and went out there on several expeditions and met some other people and did some other expeditions with other groups in that area in the Arklatex. And it it was crazy fun. Met a lot of good people, had a lot of different experiences, and uh, we started doing some research kind of on our own, and we had taken some videos, posted a bunch of stuff on Facebook, just on our personal pages or whatever, whenever we would do this. And in the course of all that, we met somebody who would later become my other research partner, he was kind of an entrepreneur, and he was into marketing and branding. And you have to remember, during this time, YouTube was brand new, Facebook was brand new. These were all just, we're just kind of getting in to the whole social media thing. And so anyway, he said, you guys should really, do something with these videos. People would watch them or whatever. And so I'm like, really? You think so? He's like, yeah, you should create a YouTube channel. You should do all this stuff. And so anyway, kind of as a joke, he created a Facebook cover of me and Angela standing back to back wearing leather jackets, and it was like in a deep dark forest kind of thing, and then a background, and then on the side in hot pink with a little footprint, it said coming fall of 2012 Bigfoot Chicks or whatever. And
Wow.
so I put it up as my cover, and I kid you not, within 24 hours of putting that up, I had everybody who was anybody who had a podcast or Blog Talk TV calling me and
Get you on
asking
it.
me for an interview. It was
Wow.
surreal. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And because I mean, I was, it just barely, I hadn't barely done this. I'd done it for several years, but I just, I hadn't been in the spotlight at all for any of it. And so, so anyway, I did, and it was crazy. And, from there, that's kind of what launched me into just doing more stuff online, and meeting a lot of different people, and doing a lot of different kind of Bigfoot things, whether it was as the actual research or trying to do Bigfoot reality TV or whatever. I was, kind of got into all that at that time. And so, and then through all that, I learned a lot about social media and digital marketing, and was able to become a digital marketer. So that's what I do now. So I have my own business. Yeah, I have my own business,
Awesome.
which is the name of my business is Siren Media, and Siren was my nickname because I have a really loud yell. So, so anyway, I have, and my logo is increasing your digital footprint, and I have a footprint as part of my logo. So anyway, it's all very Bigfoot related. And when I give presentations for digital marketing, I tell them the story, and of course they're all fascinated, and they want me to give a presentation on Bigfoot, which I have.
Awesome.
So it's fun. But yeah, that's, long story short, that's kind of my foray into Bigfoot and how I became the Bigfoot Chick.
Well, that's awesome. How did you get the privilege of being a writing consultant for the movie?
My partner at the time was involved with several people that were making different kinds of movies, because that's when Bigfoot was hot. Everybody was doing all kinds of stuff, making movies, making TV shows or whatever. And he had some connections, and so he would write some stuff, and I would help. Would help edit, proof, whatever, give my suggestions, give my ideas. So because I was a researcher in the people shooting the movie, obviously didn't know anything about Bigfoot.
You could help them develop the characteristics and stuff.
Right.
Yeah. The movie I think was shot, but I don't know if it ever went to distribution or anything after that. But Dr. Meldrum was in it. I got to meet him. I got to interview him. And if you go to the Bigfoot Chick Adventures YouTube, you'll see my interview with him.
So how do we find some of your stuff? Like how do the listeners?
Yeah, if you want to follow me on Facebook, it's Bigfoot Chick Adventures. YouTube channel by the same name, Bigfoot Chick Adventures. You can also find any of my YouTube stuff through the old names, which is Squatch Unlimited or just the Bigfoot Chick. It'll still pop up if you put in those names, if that's what you know me as or when you started following me. But yeah, right now everything's been rebranded the Bigfoot Chick Adventures. So you can find it. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's Siren BFC1, Bigfoot Chick 1.
Well, thank you for that information.
Sure.
So you've already told us about a couple of interesting people you've met along the way. Can you think of anyone else interesting that you've met along the way?
Well, sure. I've met Cliff Erickman, and I've met Bobo, and I've met Ken Gerhard and Adam Davies. I love them all. I think they're great. And I've done an expedition with Adam, and Adam is just a wealth of knowledge. He's awesome. I've also done an expedition with Dr. Meldrum, and Dr. Meldrum is he has this like hypnotic voice. You can just listen to him. He's so eloquent, but he's got this really deep, bassy voice, and you listen to him talk, and if you're sitting at a campfire and the campfire's going and he's talking, you just get drawn in. It's just because it's hypnotic, and he's so knowledgeable and the nicest person. So nice.
We saw him in Gatlinburg, and it was at the end of the day, and we stood in line, and I know he'd been there for hours. He was just as nice as he could be.
He's a very sweet man, and so incredibly intelligent. I don't think there's anything he doesn't know or it can speak to something. If you bring something up, he can speak to some point on it and does it so eloquently. And I've just learned a lot listening to him. He's amazing.
Yeah. Do you have any projects coming up or anything that you're working on right now? Anything in the future we can be looking forward to?
I have a couple of things that are just they're just kind of in the idea phase. You know how that works. Just a lot of hurry up and wait. Yeah. So we'll see if any of those things kind of pan out. But in the meantime, I am really just, I sort of took a sabbatical when I started my business. So I'm just now starting to get back into field research, which is my true passion, what I really love. So I'm just now trying to find groups that go out regularly that I can say, hey, I'm available. I want to come and do some research or whatever. I'm just
we're in Georgia.
Yeah, exactly. So just trying to learn who does what and who does what when, and just see if they're willing to accept me as a participant in their expedition, and try to get back into that, and then kind of do some of my own documentation of my adventures. Not so much that I'm looking to get on a show or anything. I just want to just document what I'm doing and what I'm learning, because I really enjoy telling people about my Bigfoot adventures and my stories. And so I've had a few opportunities recently to give some presentations, and so I would love to just be able to add to those stories with some new ones, so and get back out there. So
absolutely. What part of Georgia do you live?
I live in Northeast Georgia. I live in the little town of Winder, which is outside of Athens. So real close to Athens.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, Melissa, does your husband go out more with you? When you start back in, will he be going out with you, and he's that interested?
He is also interested, absolutely. And awesome. When he can, he does. And our children are grown now, so that makes it a little easier to go out. Before, we kind of had to tag team those kind of adventures. But yeah, he absolutely loves it and has done a lot in the past with me, with organizing some expeditions, and
that's great.
He has a background in GIS and mapping, and was able to extrapolate some really interesting coincidences that we came up with looking at maps and times, this, that, and the other. And he kind of made some predictions about where we might find some activity, and sure enough, we did. So that was awesome.
Great.
So he's got that know-how. So
that's pretty cool.
Having him come when he can.
Has he had any like encounters or experiences?
Yeah, we actually had one. It was just he and I together. We
Oh.
had one in North Georgia, and it was on a Father's Day weekend. We happened to all be staying in a cabin somewhere, and
Okay.
we decided that we would go out about midnight because all the festivities with the family and stuff were finished, and so we thought we'd go out about midnight. We had a place in mind, and we went, and he he uh, he had been working on uploading a bunch of different sounds on his laptop,
Okay.
and lots of different animal sounds, some human sounds, and then the hoop knock sequence from the Sierra sounds. I'm assuming you're all familiar with Sierra sounds.
Right.
Yeah, so he had, those are alleged Bigfoot sounds, and so he had taken some of those sounds and mixed them with these other sounds that he had, like, common things you might hear in this part of the country at night, and then some just really bizarre human sounds as well. Let your mind just travel and reel with that, because it was, as gross as you might imagine. So anyway, he was having fun with that. So we drove into this place, and kind of waited, and on the way in, I noticed a couple of deer cross our path, and we just we pulled into this. It was a part of a trailhead parking lot, and I felt really uncomfortable when we got up there. And if you ever go with me on an expedition, you'll learn really, really quick that I'm not, and I don't say it to brag, but I don't scare easily. I'm usually the brave one. I'm usually one that will go first. And so I felt really, really uncomfortable when we got up there. And I was like, why do I feel so uncomfortable? I didn't want to get out of the car, which is really, really not me. And so I decided not to get out of the car. So what I did was I opened the door to the car. So the door was ajar, and I sat on the seat, but my feet were on the gravel. And I just listened. And then my husband put his computer and speakers in the back of the car and was call blasting these sounds. Well, as we were listening, I did hear some movement, kind of off to my 1 o'clock, and it kind of moved to my 12 o'clock. And I just assumed it was those deer, because it wasn't real loud, and I heard some movement. And I made a comment to my husband. I hear something moving. It's probably those deer. And he's like, yeah, okay. I think he heard it too, or whatever. And so he kept, he had different reels going, and he kept playing with these sounds, and he had them going. And so after a few more minutes, the sound moved off to my left to like my 10 o'clock. And that's where the door was kind of open right there. And all of a sudden, I felt like this weird kind of buzzing that started in my toes and went all the way up my entire body. And then I looked down. I kind of was looking down, and then all of a sudden it was like, if you were to sit in a chair in a dark room and somebody blindfolded you, so you really couldn't see anything, but somebody silently walked up next to you, you can kind of feel they're there.
Feel they're there.
Yeah, that biokinetic energy. So that's what it was like. I was looking down, and all of a sudden it was like somebody put their face in between that V where the door opened, and was leaning in to say something to me. And I sat up real straight and looked, because I really expected to see somebody, but nobody was there. It was the weirdest thing. And that kind of freaked me out, because I could swear somebody was there. And
Wow.
And so then that tingly feeling just started to intensify. And then I'm just like, well, what did I eat? Am I having an allergic reaction to something? What's going on? I'm trying to figure out, why do I feel this way? And it started to intensify, and then it started to feel sort of euphoric. It kind of felt good. It kind of felt like the drugs were kicking in. I was like, ooh, okay. And so I thought, but before I fall out, and my husband has no idea what happened to me, I should probably say something to him. So I looked at him and I said, hey, I feel really weird. And he looked at me and I said, I feel really tingly. And he paused and he looked at me and he looked in the direction of where I had, been experiencing what I thought where someone was. And he goes, yeah, I do too. And I'm like,
So you got hit with
yeah,
infrasound then.
right. And so I was just like, is this what being zapped feels like? Is that what this is? Because in some of the groups they call that being zapped. When it's just we assume it's an infrasound experience. Yeah. And so I said, do you feel scared? And he said, no. And I said, do you think we should leave? And he paused for a few more minutes and he said, yeah, I think we should leave. And so like, as soon as he said that, I picked my feet up, put him in the car and shut the door. And I'm like, all right, let's get out of here. And so I was, he hurried and got the stuff settled in the back, closed the door, got in and cranked up the car. And we started driving back down to the main road. And I was so affected by that experience that my teeth were actually chattering. I couldn't talk right because my teeth kept trying to chatter.
Really?
And yeah, it was weird. And so by the time we got to the main road, he's like, we have to go back. And I'm like, what? He's like, I left my brand new GPS on the ground. And that's when his handheld GPS were brand new and they were expensive, and he just got one for Father's Day. So so we had to go all the way back up to the place. So the whole time we're both like this at the dash, just looking like, oh my gosh, what's out there? And so anyway, we got back up there, and I would not get out of the car at this point. So he got up and picked up his GPS, but he said that feeling was gone. So I don't know what was there exactly, but we went back the next day during the day, and I really hadn't had any tracker training or sign cutting experience at all at that point, because I was still very new to doing this stuff. And so, but I did find a rather large impression that looked like it could have been a footprint, and the heel and the toe, the way the toe was pointed, was right at where I was sitting.
Where you sitting.
So yeah. Wow. So I wish I could go back in time and look at that now, knowing what I know about tracks and sign cutting and this, that, and the
other. Now, aren't you? You've been trained in you've been
trained.
I've
taken a tracker course. Yeah. And so I would, I'd love to just go back in time and and see if I could, really see a lot more to make more of that experience. But I did find that track, and my husband looked at it, and we just thought it was really, really interesting. But again, back before smartphones, back before we could easily take pictures of things and easily, document our experience. But that was crazy, and it happened to both of us. And so I believe, having had a couple of other similar type experiences, I believe that was probably an infrasound experience.
Have you ever had a Class A sighting?
I have not. I have been sitting right next to somebody who saw one through a thermal. It's Mike Green. If you've seen the Mike Green footage of the real tall, he reenacts it, and it's the thing's going like this behind the tree, and it was in it climbs up and grabs the zagnut bar off the stump. If you've ever seen that footage,
wow.
I was sitting right next to him the very first time he saw that walking, because we both kind of heard movement down in the thing, and he had kind of jury rigged up this little thermal with a recorder on it, and he was about to let me look when he went up to record it, and then lost it. It was gone. So, so it was crazy. But that's the closest I've ever come to actually seeing something. But I've had several experiences where I've heard things and where I felt things and just kind of feel like I was really close to one. But I have not yet seen one, and that is my goal.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Mine
too.
Have you found any trackways or anything like that?
I did find a trackway when we were in North Carolina. I was with a group of people, and this was fairly after we had all received some tracker training, and we found a trackway I was not the first one to find the print. The first person that found the print made a cast of it and kept it, which, that's their right. And so, but I helped find the trackway that led up to that perfect print. It was in some real soft mud. And then we saw some transfer across the street. There was like a street, a road, and there's some transfer of that mud on the road. And then I picked up the track on the other side.
Oh,
So
wow.
wasn't a huge track. It was only about 13.5 inches long, but still a big
Yeah.
foot. But
Oh, yeah.
but yeah, and it casted pretty nicely. It looked pretty good.
Wow.
So yeah, that I was able to help with that.
That's great.
Well, out of all the places that you've researched, what's your favorite, like, state or area that you
Kind of
like
like
to
asking me
research?
which of my children I love more. I've had really great experiences at a lot of different places. I've had consistent luck either being with people who had experiences or experiencing something myself in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So I do love North Carolina and some of the places I've been there. But I had really great experiences in Tennessee, in West Virginia, like I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I was gonna
In
ask you,
Florida.
I was gonna ask you, Melissa, what part of West Virginia? So, like a certain city. So the reason I asked, I've been up to compete in this sniper competition for many years, and it's long. It hasn't been conducted here in last several years, but it was up in West Virginia, a place called Seneca Rocks, and
Okay.
um, I know from our experience there on top of the mountains, man, that place is rugged as yeah, as anything. In fact, we would always kind of use that as great training for anything that we had to do in the America Mountain West. And you would think, okay, West Virginia. I mean, you're shooting down the like the Shenandoah valleys, and real high. So like yeah, it was a lot of moisture up in that area. It stayed cloudy and foggy way up high in the elevations up there. But I always, I, I remember used to like we would start these climbs early in the morning where it's still dark. So you'd had to get up to your first positions by, obviously, at daybreak and whatnot. And it was, I remember just looking around. I was like, "Ooh, man, this place looks squatchy," you know, very, very, very squatchy. And so it's funny you mentioned about West Virginia because I was like, man, that would definitely looks like a great spot for them to be hiding out in. But then again, you know what? I live in Augusta, Georgia, and you know what? And we've had
There's been sightings up there. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Barb down there in the swamps. Obviously very you know yeah, a large swamp area there, but
Oh,
obviously
yeah.
there's a long history of sightings in there. So, but you're talking about like North Carolina. That's probably like the mountains area, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All of these places that I've been were mountainous for sure.
Mountain.
Yeah, yeah. I frequent Pinehurst, North Carolina. I've never seen one on the golf course out there, but or tracks.
Might be a little too exposed for him there.
Yeah. It's kind of yeah. It's
That'll
too.
probably be where you see your first one, Joe.
Right.
On
It,
golf
it,
course.
hey, that would make my third sighting. And that by then, you know what? Shoot,
They say once you see one, you're prone to keep seeing them.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people. I said, man, now that my eyes are calibrated for this thing, next time I'll just have to hit the record button.
There you
So
go.
so I made a note earlier on your West Virginia Bigfoot expedition. You got to meet some Class A weirdos. What is the definition of a Class A weirdo?
Oh, that was actually not in West Virginia. That was the second expedition that I
Oh,
went
the
to.
second.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that was actually in Tennessee.
Okay, so
Yeah.
The
Tennessee.
first one was in Georgia, Joe.
First one was
Duh.
Georgia.
Yeah.
The second one was in Tennessee.
And the
So
next
that the
one
Class
was
A
West
weirdos
Virginia.
were in
The
Tennessee.
Class
So
A. Well,
what is?
I should say it was just one Class A weirdo,
Uh-huh.
but he had a friend that was kind of his sidekick. So Um,
Oh, he had a sidekick weirdo.
yeah. Um, you know, and I have to say,
Okay.
I haven't run into anybody like this since. So
Oh,
this is a rare exception.
a rare. So it's
Yeah.
like a class
I-
A sighting,
Yeah.
but a weirdo.
But
Okay.
yeah, he was a class A weirdo. He
Okay.
apparently before he got there, because people were telling me about this after I had arrived, but
Hmm.
before he got to the expedition, um, he was telling people, that he would be arriving shortly, or I don't know if
Oh.
he was, I think he was, um, I guess he was radioing. He'd come into the area and was radioing that he had arrived and was trying to look for where the base camp was or whatever. And
Oh.
um, he said, of course, they're asking him, what kind of car are you driving? What color?
Gotcha. Yep.
Trying to keep an eye out for him, right? And so he described himself. He said, I just look like Jesus. And so,
Oh.
like, okay. And so,
Right.
so anyway, everybody referred to him as such for the rest of the trip. And, and so he, he was, really into his herbal refreshment,
Oh yeah.
and
Okay.
There you go.
and did not sleep at night. And
Oh.
so he would stay up around the fire when we all were in our tent, and he described himself as, um, a caretaker. That's what he did by profession. I don't know if he was like a nursing home assistant. I'm not sure what he did, but he did some sort of job where he helped care for people. So he said, that's why I take care of
Okay.
people. And by that point, I'm like really creeped out. I'm like, is he gonna like try to come in my tent? What is he gonna do?
Okay.
And so I'm like, I'm fine, nobody needs to take care of me. So but anyway, he stayed up all night enjoying his herbal refreshment, and then continued to, and then everywhere we went, he would point and say that Bigfoot had done that, or Bigfoot had left that, or just, I
Oh.
mean, to the point of just ridiculous. So
Yeah.
so he kept doing that over and over again. And finally, he well, I guess on the next night, he had approached different people saying he was going to go sit by the fire and smoke his herbal refreshment. And he offered some to my dad, and my dad just said, "No, man, I'm trying to quit." And I just died laughing at that point. And so anyway, at that point, we went to the organizer of this expedition, which happened to be Matt Moneymaker, and he got this guy to go on a VSA. A VSA. He goes, I need you guys to go on this VSA. And they're like, sure, yes. What do you want us to do? What is a VSA? He said, this is a very special assignment.
Okay.
And so he sent them to like this like really remote, creepy place. And he said, I need you to stay there for 3 hours, and I need you to document whatever happens to you. So he
Good
sent
Lord.
these guys on their VSA, and
Art.
and they were never heard from again. I don't know if
Oh
they got scared and hightailed it home or what,
man.
but it was really funny. But yeah,
All
he
right.
was
Oh,
just
it was.
he was a little over the top, and I'm happy and proud to say I have never met anybody like that.
Okay.
Most people
Well,
are pretty there for the learning and the
yeah.
adventure of trying to
Right.
have some sort of a connection with this unknown creature.
That's good information to
Yeah.
know for anyone that
Yeah.
decides
But if
to
you ever go on
participate.
an expedition and anybody anywhere gives you a VSA, you probably need to just check
Just
yourself.
go on to the car and head to the house.
Just
Yeah,
go
you
home.
you mean yeah? At that point, you've been identified as
That's right.
the
You've
class A
you
weirdo.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes. It's a badge.
Angie, we need to create some class A weirdo badges that you
Yeah.
can just hand out to people. Hey, can you wear this, please?
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
you've earned this merit badge. It's just an A. It's just an A. You know.
Well, Melissa sent me
That's
some
pretty cute.
newspaper articles. Um,
Oh.
she's been researching some of these stories about the hairy wild man, and some of the stories that she's found from the newspaper clipping go back to what,
Yeah,
1700s?
about to the 1700s.
Where where's this at? What state?
You can find these on my Bigfoot Chicks page.
Okay.
If you search my photos, because they're all
Yeah.
photos of these old articles.
Yeah.
And these all came from John Green's database, if you're
Okay.
familiar with John Green. They came from his database. So they're back then they called them wild men, and they're really really interesting accounts, and they're really fun to read because
Yeah. Two of them are very short. I could read one of them right quick,
yeah,
just so
sure.
you can see how interesting it is. It's from the compiler, which says, Wild Man of the Woods. A gigantic man of the woods has been discovered in Greene County, Arkansas, and a party has been organized to endeavor to catch him. When last seen, he was pursuing a herd of cattle who were flying in a state of great alarm as if pursued by a dreaded enemy. On seeing the party who discovered him, he looked at them deliberately for a short time, turned, and ran away with great speed, leaping from 12 to 14 feet at a time. His footprints measured 13 inches each. He was of gigantic structure, the body being covered with hair, and the head with long locks that fairly enveloped his neck and shoulders. That was June the 2nd, 1851.
Wow.
And
So
just
just
the
like
language, yeah, the
today,
language of how they of the day and how they wrote was just really
yeah,
descriptive
but the
and really
Right.
description is the same as
Mhm.
like what you hear today, except the language is a little different.
Different.
And you know, them people back in 1851 had better things to do
Yeah, for sure,
than
for sure.
hoax a wild man. So,
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is if you read through enough of those articles, you'll see that they've actually caught some, and they have
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
language.
I'm back.
he's back.
Oh, she's back. Okay.
You went out for a minute.
Oh, sorry. I said they.
They
What's
caught
interesting
him.
is if you read enough of those, you'll see that in some cases they were actually they apprehended this creature. They caught him, and they sometimes the creature wouldn't talk at all, and sometimes it would, but it was unintelligible speech. And I interpreted that as to it must have had some sort of a language that they didn't understand it. So
Right.
so it's really really interesting. And then I've had people ask me, well, why do you think they could catch them back then and they can't catch them now? And I said, well, these people lived on the wild frontier, and
Yeah.
they didn't live in the concrete jungle and sit in front of a computer all day like we do. These men were like
These were
men,
trappers.
right?
These were
And,
hunters.
they
Yeah.
Everybody carried a gun.
exactly,
That's
and they were
right.
strong, and
Well, that
they a group of them could probably wrestle one of these things down.
Yeah, and
Um,
obviously they
Well,
teamed together.
yeah.
and back in those times, they had to be really aware of their surroundings because of the
Exactly.
farm life. And
Mhm.
so they were more aware than, like you say, the concrete jungle people that live around and, sitting in front of the, food
Well,
tube.
and they were, and they were on high alert for anything that was going to affect their livelihood
Right,
or
right. Yeah.
their family or anything like that, because
Right.
that's all they had. So
And where can we read more of these articles at?
if you go to Bigfoot Chicks, Bigfoot Chick Adventures on Facebook and search through the photos, you'll see, you'll find them. There's a bunch in there.
All right. Well, Barb, did
Cool.
you have some questions for
Oh,
Melissa?
just well, kind of. This is going to be my first adventure out into the field. Upcoming, not this coming weekend, but around the 17th. And I'm like Angie. I know a lot. I've read a lot. I've seen a lot. I've listened to a lot of YouTubes and such as this, and um, kept up with everything. But going out for my first time, um, what's your big recommendation as far as other than listening and taking some advice from the ones that are with you that are already experienced? What would you say?
Well, you're not going alone.
Oh, no,
Okay, good.
no, it's a
They
group
don't
of
go
us.
alone. That would
Oh,
be my
no.
first advice. Never go
Trust
alone.
me, I won't be the first out the door.
And I would advise you to go armed.
Right.
And I'm not. My least of my worries when I go is Bigfoot. I'm more worried about people in the woods. So
Right.
I would make sure that you're armed. And I don't advise that anybody, man or woman, go out alone ever. I just
Oh,
don't think
no.
it's smart.
Mm-mm.
But just have a plan for how you want your expedition to go. If you're going with other people, I have found that kind of makes it a little bit easier. If when everybody meets together, just kind of sit down and say, are there places we want to just hike and just look for tracks and this, that, and the other, and just kind of maybe put together a loose kind of agenda for the expedition, so that you can change it if you need to, but you've got plenty of things to look at, and plenty of things to maybe divide people up and divide and conquer if there's a lot, so that you get a lot of things covered. But then my biggest advice is at night, especially, just more or less just kind of relax by the fire. And are there going to be a lot of women with you?
I think just a couple of women.
Okay.
Angie and I.
Yeah, if they're if especially when there's a lot of women, but if you guys are willing to kind of make a fire or a place kind of off from where the men are, and just kind of have a real low fire, low light, don't have a lot of extra light. I have found that sometimes that can be really helpful to if things are around, it kind of makes you more interesting, because from everything I've read and everything I've listened to other people say, it just feels like women are less threatening than men, maybe. We're smaller in stature. We certainly smell better, and we don't usually carry these big guns in the woods. So sometimes we've done a few experiments like that, where we had like all the women in one area, and the men weren't far away. They were where they could hear us yell or whatever if we needed something. But just you maybe try separating a little bit and see if that brings any kind of activity to you. And then if you just really listen to how you feel, if whatever that sixth sense that's out there, if you feel like something is watching you, it probably is. So just kind of be aware, and be aware directionally if you feel anything directionally. Like I was telling you in that infrasound experience, I could really tell it was directional. It was coming from from my left. And that's where I found an impression the next day. So I feel like, something was there. So just kind of pay attention to those things. And then if you have a dog or anything with you, most people don't bring their dogs, because a lot of people, there's a lot of accounts of Bigfoot not liking dogs. Some people don't bring their dogs. But if you have a dog with you, pay attention to the dog and see how that dog is acting.
Way they're acting and such as
and
that.
Just kind of pay attention, because they're usually quicker to pick up on a change. And then always, to me, the telltale sign is silence. If it gets way too quiet, that's always to me like, okay, something's going on if it's super quiet, because it's never quiet in the woods at night, ever.
Well, gosh, I thought about a good question I was going to ask you, and then I let it go. Well, okay. What would you say is your biggest safety deal? What would you do to protect yourself in a situation if that came about?
What kind of safety situation?
Well, if in case you were confronted, say with a Bigfoot. I mean, I'm just a scenario here.
She almost knows if she should run.
Or knock Angie's knees out from under her and
wave your iPhone in front of it. It'll run. It'll be a blurry run.
Take your picture.
Just
exactly.
Put your hand up and get your phone ready and say, I come in peace. I just need a selfie. And no, seriously.
And nobody can really say what they would really do. I
was going to say, it's a really great question, because we've talked about it while we've been walking in the woods looking for this mysterious creature. Like, what are we actually going to do if we come face to face with one? What are we going to do?
And I said, rely on your instincts.
Right. And so you intelligently think you'll do A, B, and C. But
Right.
when
But
fear and fight or flight takes over, it's a whole different story, right?
That's,
So,
that's right.
um,
That's right.
so my plan is to give it a wide berth like I would a bear or anything else. Just give it a wide berth, because I feel like if I'm coming in and I'm not giving off threatening vibes, I don't have
right.
a gun drawn on it, whatever. Not to say that I don't have my gun holstered and ready to go, but
Right.
if I don't, if I don't feel like I'm being a threat, then there's no reason for them to perceive me as a threat.
Right.
So, but what I'll probably do is back away slowly and just give it a lot
Right.
of
Yeah.
a wide berth. Of all the accounts I've read, which are not many, where they were kind of hostile or territorial, it was just that they either felt cornered, or they was young somewhere nearby and you were too close
Right.
to the young. Maybe you didn't realize it. You know what I'm saying? And in my mind, we just treat it like a wild animal.
Right.
We walk up on it, give it a wide berth. It's probably
yeah.
not going to bother you if you don't bother it.
Right.
So, or if you don't threaten it in some way. So that's my plan. But
Yeah.
if I, run screaming like a girl, I can't say for sure. But I'd like to say,
Right.
because I've already said in the beginning that I'm pretty brave and that
Right.
things don't scare me easily. And I already know I'm going to look for this 8 to 10 foot tall hairy creature that could just backhand me
Right.
and shut my lights
Yeah.
off forever, right?
So you're out there already. So,
Yes.
just
So
give it
I'm
your
already
best shot
taking a chance. So I just kind of feel like that it would be as fascinated with me as I am of it.
with
And
it.
I feel like if they don't feel threatened by you, they'll let you see them. You know what I'm saying? That
Yeah.
I just kind of feel like that. I feel like the people who have
Right.
walked across them and had that moment of eye contact, it just feels like they were a safe distance apart, and they did have that. They locked eyes for a few minutes, enough to rock the person's world. That, oh my gosh, I don't live in the world I thought I did. And then
Yeah.
he just, they turn and they walk away,
Right.
and then they don't usually see them again. So,
Yeah.
they're
Well,
just very kind of
Yeah.
gentle giants at that point. Not that I think they all are. Please don't misunderstand.
Oh no. But yeah.
But I feel like, if you can give them a wide berth, they're not going to bother you. But I feel like
Right.
if they're okay with being seen, they'll let you see them.
Yeah. Well,
What do you
and
think,
that's,
Barbara?
Pardon?
I asked Melissa, what does she think they are?
Yeah. What do you think they are?
Well, there's two camps on what they are. There's the physical, flesh and blood creature, and then the more of a spiritual, interdimensional creature. And I will come right out and say I have absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
All I know is that I don't know. But I am very open-minded. When I first got started, and I heard people tell accounts where they're like, oh, it's interdimensional, this, that, and the other, I was like, that's the most absurd thing I've ever heard, And then I realized, well, that's not being very open-minded, because, we already know there are multiple dimensions, and we know that things come out of them, things that are not necessarily good things, come out of them. And so, who's to say? Who's to say that this, is not just another part of that whole mystery? So I'm just very, very open-minded. What I tend to say to people up to this point is I'm shifting a little bit, because I've read more and more and more where it seems like it could be just a little bit weirder than I thought it was. But what I said up to this point is, if they are flesh and blood creatures, I feel like there's some sort of a descendant of the Gigantopithecus blacki that was thought to have died out, but didn't. And so that would make sense when you look at all of the different sightings around the entire world.
Yeah.
They're called different things in different places, but essentially it's the same kind of creature that exhibits the same kind of personality and leaves the same kind of footprint all over, the world globally.
Right.
So, that's kind of where I think it came from, but I do feel very strongly that it has extra abilities. just kind of like dolphins have been here for a very, very, very long time, right? And scientists have just figured out that they have their own language. They have these abilities to kind of like help heal people that are sick. They have all these different abilities,
Yep.
and they're not really. I don't know that they've really been like documented as a known thing, but they're just observations that scientists have made, right? So I don't know that people are ready to put all that into a book just yet. Not all of it, but some of it is making its way. So I feel like these creatures have been around for a very, very, very long time, and it would make sense that they would also possess some sort of enhanced ability that would allow them to remain elusive and to protect themselves and
Yeah.
to maybe manipulate the visual field in some way, not in some weird creepy way, maybe in a way that can be explained by science, but just you know they want to remain elusive, and they're really, really good at it. So there's got to be a reason for that, right? So
Right.
those are my jumbled thoughts, but the short answer is I have no idea what they are, and I think they could be this, and I think they could be that, and I think I'm very open-minded to whatever they may be, and I don't look at anybody's view of them as suspect anymore. I'm just like, okay, if that's what you think, that's awesome, and if you've had experiences, I'd love to hear about them because I have no idea.
Yeah. Barb, did you have any more questions?
Oh, no, not really. I mean, I have a lot of questions, but it wouldn't fit in. I just well, no, I don't mean it like that. I mean, like I would like to know, if she's ever run across, since she's been in the mountains and doing things, has she ever saw any petroglyphs, any kind of, all that kind of deal. I just, you know,
I haven't seen petroglyphs,
right?
but I have
Structures and such.
I've seen some things that people would refer to as structures. I don't really know how I feel about structures because there's so much natural deadfall out there that gets called a structure, that unless I see something that really looks intricately braided and is 20 feet off the ground, then I'm like, oh, that's a structure. You know what I'm saying? But if it's on the ground, I have a hard time calling it a structure.
Right.
Unless there's something really odd about it. So, but I have seen like a couple of X's that look like they were placed there. They could have been placed by a person. There's no way to know for sure, but I just happened upon them and they were real near a trail. So, like I said, it could be. I've seen structures that people were convinced were Bigfoot, like lean-tos or whatever. But I think it was just like a Boy Scout that built it. You know what I'm saying? That I don't think it was necessarily a Bigfoot structure.
Yeah.
I am dying to go to Washington and see some of the nests they found. Now that is compelling.
That would be cool.
Big nests that they found out there. And I've seen the pictures and stuff of that, and heard the stories, and that's incredible. Now, if I found something like that here, that would be like, okay, that's something. That's to look at.
So what we found down in south of Augusta here, in a place we call it the Happy Place. Happy Harris was a gentleman that was on one of our very first podcasts and had an experience while he was hunting like 30 years ago. Well, he had taken us back to this property and we found these round circular nests made from pine straw, as if someone got out there and bent over and kind of scooped or raked the pine straw into like a nest, like in the middle, and then all of a sudden there was an impression, that impression, was the size of a person laying down. I know Johnny laid down in it, and it was, it's like he fit right in that same impression. But we found multiple of those, at this property, and that's where we had that that juvenile sighting. And Scott's found tracks out there that every time they've gone out, they've had they'll find like these well preserved Indian arrowheads just placed in
in different
wide open
spots.
spots to find
How
them.
cool is that?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome.
no, it is, and yeah, so and I know the nests you're talking about there in Washington because I seen it on like on TV, on some
Yeah,
of the
Discovery.
documentaries. Because I was like, huh, and I said, well, yeah, that makes sense, and they look big, to hold something, and then that's why I keep on thinking about the things that we found with the pine straw. Obviously, we don't have the type of the vegetation and trees and the all the big ferns like they have in Western
Yeah,
Washington. And I lived in Washington State for 9 years when I was stationed up there, so I'm very familiar with that area. The whole rainforest and whatnot. Man, I've elk hunted almost every corner of that state. Washington. It's very fortunate. My first roommate, was born and raised there, so he taught me a lot about, obviously,
I know.
the different areas of Washington. But yeah, their terrain's a lot different than. But when you come to Georgia, all of a sudden you start finding these nests because right, that's what animals or beings, creatures have available to them here. And pine straw makes complete sense because it's a great insulator, and you know what, if you pile up enough of it, right, just like we do in our lawns, it's a great. It makes a nice, comfy little cushion
Pushing.
to lay in. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look up Bigfoot Chick Adventures the next time you guys go find those things because I'd love to join you. That would be awesome.
Ah,
Joe,
yeah,
real
yeah,
quick. I'm sorry. Joe, real quick.
yeah,
I have a
yeah.
question for you. When
Uh
y'all
oh.
are going out to the happy place,
Uh huh.
do y'all ever take any magnetic readings or anything? I'm a big person on magnetic readings, and I guess because at one point I did a lot of the ghost hunting and everything, as we were talking about last night. And I've just found that not long ago, and I think I even to Angie. I Googled now. I'm sorry, but I didn't need that or anything. But I was Googling and finding, hot spots and everything over the different areas and for magnetic readings and such as that, trying to see if there was any correlation with, where we see a lot of sightings, where a lot of, Bigfoot activity and such as that. And I
Yeah.
just wondered about the place that y'all go to,
Well, you,
if y'all ever did any of that.
to be honest with you, Barb, no, I have not. I mean, other than, what, I carry obviously like a GPS, but then, being in the
Right.
Army, I also carried a magnetic compass, so I always use that
Uh-huh.
as a backup, but I've
Right.
never actually pulled it out to look.
Right.
Um, You know,
I just
and I haven't seen like Johnny. I mean, so Johnny's kit, he's got a lot of video equipment, and things like
right.
that. So I don't really see him with
Yeah.
anything magnetic. And
I was
Scott,
just curious.
he may, you know, so
Yeah.
um, the uniqueness about that area there, it's it's rural. You know, it's around a bunch of farmland, and the
Streams.
property owner has, yeah, it's got some running creeks and that go through it, and the property owner, that it's been in that family since the days of the British colonies. So
Right.
that's how they got the land. It was through the King's Grant, right? That's how that family got that land. So it's been with them for so long, and they've not developed it or anything. So other than, the property owner who likes to come out and then deer hunt like in the fall, but he doesn't venture from the truck. He just drives up, parks, getting his
Yeah.
little deer stand and sits there. And then, when he's done, he walks right back to his truck and probably no more than 40 yards, and then drives out of there. And he's not there every day, every weekend.
Right.
He's just, whenever he's got time, and he's a little bit older gentleman. So it stays pretty much untouched. And then I noticed there's a lot of animals, a lot of deer, a lot of hogs there. So when you can walk up on hogs in the daytime, you got a you got a huge population because when hogs feel pressured, they're smart, they move out, right?
Mhm.
And um, these these hogs there, literally, I mean, we can be sitting at our trucks and they come wandering out, you know, and so that tells me the population is pretty, pretty high there. But yeah, nothing on the magnetic readings and stuff like that. I mean, heck, we still kick ourselves not being great videographers. That's the tough part, right? So
Mhm.
yeah. No, thank you so much, Melissa. Man, I mean, this I mean, fascinating story about how
Yeah.
your beginning and interest in all this and this topic, and then still continuing on today, with you and your husband and the weird infrasound EBGBs thing that you got,
Yeah.
because definitely it's not something I'd want to experience, so.
All right. Well, the next time we're all around the campfire, I'll tell you all my other experiences because
All
they're
right.
pretty wild.
Oh Lord.
Yeah, I want to hear more.
So, Angie, aren't you putting together like an outing, a camp outing or something? Did I see?
Up in Pine.
Oh, that's just for the little group, like a
Oh, okay.
family fun thing
Yeah.
for
Okay.
people to come bring their kids and stuff for just Bigfoot.
Good job, Angie. Just invite people to bring bait out with them. Okay.
No, it's in the park and everything. It's just for our group. Anybody, that wants to come,
Oh,
just,
okay.
a fun weekend of fellowship and getting to know other Bigfooters and Bigfoot
Yeah.
movie and Winnie roast and scavenger hunt and all that sort of stuff. So
No, no, Melissa, did you attend the Molina festival?
Yes, sir. I was there. I wanted
Oh,
to hear
wow.
Jessica and JT Hudson. You were
Wow.
talking earlier about the ghost hunting part of it,
Woo.
and I really wanted to hear JT's presentation because I had missed it one of the last times. We both spoke at the Alabama conference last year, and I missed most of his talk, and I really wanted to hear it because he um, he has so much insight, and he really was talking about how Bigfoot, aliens, the paranormal are all like different facets of the same diamond, which I thought was like profound. Of like, that is so awesome. And so he was sharing these experiences that he'd had with the ghost box and all this kind of stuff that I know a little bit about, but not a lot about because I'm not a big ghost hunter person. My husband got into it for a while, but it creeps me out too much. So I'm just like,
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, he was sharing some of his information, and it was just fascinating. And he used it, you know, while they were on these Bigfoot outings, and it was really interesting, really interesting. And I wouldn't have thought about putting the two together to using the same instruments that they use to measure for paranormal activity for Bigfoot activity or um, alien activity or UFO activity or whatever it is. You know, I never would have considered, you know, using the same instruments to measure. And it, you know, he had some really interesting findings. I just thought it was fascinating. Of course, I just come off watching this huge documentary about Skinwalker Ranch, you know, and I was just like,
Oh,
so I was like way into that, and I was like, that's so cool. So anyway, but yeah, he has if you've never seen his presentation, if he gives it again, make sure you watch it because it is fantastic.
yeah. Man, I really try to um, keep the door shut on a lot of those topics. So my 9 to 5 job, as Angie and Barb know, so I work in the outdoor industry, right, with the hunting shows and whatnot. So been very blessed for the last many years to be able to go hunt all over the country, stay in some phenomenal places, and then some very rugged places. Solo hunts. In Idaho, in places where the bombing incident where
mm-hmm.
the guys were killed. Like, yeah, yeah, man, I've hunted just in that same mountain range. even though I didn't know anything about that story, um, I've hunted
Probably a
bears
good thing.
there. Yeah, bears and elk, then I've stayed in places where the homeowner's like, "Oh yeah, this cabin's haunted," and blah blah blah, and you know what? I know weird things have happened because we've had other big burly hunting type A personalities pack up and leave,
Mm.
pack up their trucks and leave because something spooked them in the middle of the night, and you know, uh, um,
Wow.
but I try to say, okay, we're making TV, so I can't believe in all that stuff because you know, we, yeah, we owe an episode to the network, right? So it's you got to get that stuff done, and who cares what's happening at night if there's like a full on brawl in the room next to us as things are getting thrown around, and because we've had that happen in homes, like literally, it sounded like adults were fighting and throwing each other against
They
furniture, and
probably
then
were.
well, but no, but then you open the door and there's no one in there, and you're
I
like,
mean, they were, but
okay.
they were doing it in a different dimension or something. I
Yeah,
don't know.
and
There you go.
so we're just like, well, just shut the door and pretend we didn't hear
Yeah.
this, and then yeah, but uh, does this stuff happen? Yeah, but then then I have to close my mind to it because you're working on a time restraint and a deadline type
Hmm.
thing, and say I know hunting show hosts who have seen weird apparitions, or you mentioned skinwalkers, someone flat out said, we got one on on video, and blah blah blah, and uh
Hmm.
and so it just kind of really raises your eyebrow to things, or at least opens your eyes that, okay, other people are experiencing these things, so are they out there? Must be, but you know what, I think a lot of people kind of put the blinders on, because
Hmm.
they don't want to know,
La
right?
la 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 la.
Yeah, yeah, they don't want to know because that's yeah, it just
Too scary
just
to think about. Their
yeah, it would just
it
make their
will.
Yeah,
lives.
It's
that's
a
true. They
major
can't
shift in
handle it.
their
They can't
paradigm,
handle it.
right? So they're like, I
Yeah.
don't. They don't want to.
Yeah,
They don't want to leave that comfy comfort zone, right?
yeah, no, exactly. But no, thank you for being on with us, and
Sure,
you
anytime.
know, with Angie's idea of doing like the women in the field. You're our second guest, but I tell you what, man, these shows back to back has been phenomenal. And I was just texting my best friend, and and it's a she, she's a she, and I was like, man, this is actually going really great, and because I mean, I'm learning a lot of things, and it's kind of neat, because I think that's good to be able to have your ladies' perspective on these things,
Well,
because
women are a little more detail oriented too.
I
Than
I,
Right.
I
they
get I get that, I do, and Melissa, you said something the same thing as the other two ladies last night about you guys aren't scared, you carry yourselves with no fear, when you're out in the field. So I was like, okay, you know what, um, that that must be something,
and I'm scared to death, but I don't know when I go out something comes over me and I'm not as afraid as I thought I would be. I don't know, it's weird.
I think it's the fear of getting there. And once you're there, then the excitement and everything takes over. And that
Then
big
it's
fear.
so fun. It is literally addictive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's the best. I mean, at the very worst, it's a super fun camping trip, right? So,
Right, at the worst,
so
it is a great weekend spent in the woods listening
right.
to, streams and hiking around looking at, nature. Uh, but at the
As
worst, you had
long
a
as
great
there's no
camping trip.
gators.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have not run into gators
Angie
doing
loves
this.
them.
I was
Wait
gonna say.
Oh,
wait till we take you with us, Melissa. We're
Okay,
gonna
I'm
do it. We're
excited
gonna
to see the
plan an
gators.
all
I
girls
think.
trip.
Okay.
something like that, Angie. I mean, actually, I encourage that if you guys find like one of those state park cabins where y'all can do a round
We ain't
table?
staying in no cabin, Joe.
No,
We
No, no.
staying.
no,
Angie, so
we're
look.
going to kayak or canoe into
Uh-huh.
the Okefenokee on some of the platforms
Oh Lord
out in
God
the
Almighty.
Okefenokee that you can spend the night out in nature with your tent on a platform with the alligators right there. The
There you go, Angie.
No.
Yep,
There you go.
Angie's got to do it. Hey, you got to do it, Angie.
They don't take a big bite. It's okay.
Mm.
I got extra legs you
You
can
know,
try on, Angie. So
I do want us to take a trip though, just out in the to a really good area and spend a weekend and do some real research.
there you
All
go.
female trip.
No, I think that would be
Probably
great.
draw in some.
You know, yeah, and knowing, I mean, heck, you might actually get some really, really
Yeah.
compelling evidence. With all the experts that you've kind of made friends with, and
Hmm.
so that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thank you,
Alrighty,
Melissa. We greatly appreciate it.
My
thank
pleasure.
you.
Thanks for having me.
It
Looking
was
forward
very
to next
nice
time.
meeting you, Melissa.
Nice to meet you as well. Hope to see you in the woods or the
All
swamp.
Thank you. All
Yes,
right.
ma'am. Thank
Alrighty.
you.
All
Good
right, you guys
night.
take care. Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.